Hi everybody, welcome to this video. If you aren't new to this channel, welcome back. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe, I beg you. I'll even wait for you, it's free. I'll give you a second. Alright, have you subscribed? Awesome, welcome to my channel. Today I'm just going to go over sort of the basic things that you need to think about when you're building your first keyboard. Now, before anything else, you obviously need to pick your materials. This includes your base, your switches, and your keycaps. Let's go over each of them. First off, you're going to want to talk about your base. What do you want in it? So, first thing you need to do is decide whether you're going to get a pre-built keyboard or a bare bones kit. Now, a bare bones kit is just the keyboard but without the switches and the keycaps, while your pre-built has your switches and keycaps. This is my firstborn child. This is the Untitled KC84. I actually don't think that you can buy this keyboard anymore, but this was my first keyboard and it was pre-built. I'll show you what it looked like when I first got it in just about now. But yeah, I've modded this thing to hell and back. Actually, yeah, there's like polyfill like just sticking out of the case. We'll ignore that, but I've definitely given this keyboard a lot of love. This is what it sounds like. So pre-built keyboards are a good way to go if you don't know if you're going to commit fully to the hobby, which I didn't when I started, because I have severe unmedicated ADHD and my hyperfixations could last about 2 weeks. But then I also have another undisclosed type of neurodivergence that allows me to become incredibly interested in things for a very long time, to the point where it is definitely to my financial detriment. For a bare bones, so if you want to have more customization and you're going into this knowing for sure that you want to get into the hobby, I would recommend getting a bare bones. This is just an example of one. This is the GMK67 by Boyi. This keyboard is relatively inexpensive. Right now the plastic version costs, I think, $47. I have the price here somewhere. Let's see, where's the price? Well, the non-VIA compatible version I think costs $47, and then the $47 US dollars, and the VIA compatible version costs around $50. I could be wrong though, because I had at some point seen a number like $42 for the non-VIA compatible version. But anyway, all you need to know is that it is relatively inexpensive and it sounds really good for a plastic keyboard because it has a polycarbonate plate and is gasket mounted. It sounds like this. So for a bare bones keyboard, again, you're going to have to buy your own keycaps and switches, so you'll have to definitely think about that when you are making all your purchases. Once you've decided if you want your keyboard to be pre-built or bare bones, and once you've decided the layout that best suits your needs, you're going to want to choose your material. If you want something a bit more lightweight, don't do this. I'm just doing it for demonstration purposes. And perhaps you want a deeper sound profile. you can choose a plastic board. Now, plastic boards have a couple cons, which is that they can be hard to mod because a lot of them close with clips, and I actually don't even know how to open this one. So this is not modded. And they can have a little bit of a hollow sound profile, but I know some people who like a hollow sound profile, so... Well, I don't know them, but I know that there are people who like a hollow sound profile. So no shame if you like that. So if you want something with a bit more reverberation, if you want something with a lower sound profile, if you want something lightweight that's easy to carry, you can put it in your bag and take it with you wherever you want to go, I would choose a plastic board. That cut was for me potentially sneezing. Anyway, if you want something that's a little bit heavier than wood, but doesn't necessarily have a sound profile that you would associate with aluminum, I would get a wood keyboard, and these are actually becoming increasingly accessible nowadays. I've seen one that was like $80, I think, on Amazon. And this one I got for $119 about a year ago. Let me get in a little closer. You can tell I don't really do this backwards a lot, or I guess mirrored. Wood is good if you want something a little bit more heavy, and if you just generally like the look of the wood. I would definitely say that the biggest plus in a wood keyboard is the aesthetic appeal. I love the look of this one, and this would actually fit very well on any office desk, so if you want something that doesn't scream gamer, yeah, wood is great. Then if you want something with extra heft, something that you can really feel the weight of, maybe you want something with a slightly higher pitch sound profile, I would suggest an aluminum keyboard. Now, aluminum keyboards are generally going to be more expensive, but there are a lot of increasingly accessible options on the market. This one, the Leobach High 75, I bought for, I think it was $60. It could have been on sale for $50, but I think I got it for $60. I've got another one, actually, that is currently underneath my plastic one that I just reviewed on my channel very recently, as in like I think a couple days ago. That's also aluminum, the GMK67, which was $69. Then there's this one. This is the, I think, yeah, Feker Galaxy 87. This is the wired-only version. I don't think they sell it anymore, but they do have the 100% version still on Amazon. So if you want to get this, but with a numpad, it's there. Again, aluminum is fantastic. Aluminum is personally my favorite sound profile just because it sounds... I mean, come on. This one is a little bit hollow, but that's something I would expect for the price point. You know, you have to cut corners somewhere. But for an example of one that isn't quite so hollow, this is my QK65 V2. This cost me an arm and a leg, I'm not gonna lie. But here's how it sounds. And another accessible option, my Neo 65. This was $109, which is really good for an aluminum keyboard. And again, this is one that I actually built. You know, they sent me the parts and I built it. But they, I believe they're selling the 75% and 98% versions right now, pre-built. And yeah, it sounds like this. I'm not biased at all, right? This is definitely, not at all, this isn't an ad for you to buy an aluminum keyboard. But yeah, anyway, plastic is lightweight, low-pitched, easy to carry, relatively inexpensive. Wood is a step up from plastic when it comes to weight, although they can get pretty expensive depending on where you get them from. And they just have a generally very sleek, beautiful, acceptable for work aesthetic. And then aluminum is going to be your heftiest material. More often than not, it's going to be quite expensive, but there are more accessible options available now than ever. And it is my favorite. I promise I'm not influencing you to buy an aluminum keyboard, but I love aluminum keyboards. I'm serious. If you want a lower sound profile, if you don't want to spend as much money, if you prefer plastic for any reason, buy plastic. I just ramble a lot. After all that, you need to decide the not so fun part, which is your budget. You need to decide how much you're willing to spend once you've narrowed down your options. So let's say you really, really want a plastic keyboard. You really don't have to spend a whole lot. You could get a really nice plastic keyboard in sort of the $40 to $80 range. And there are some great options in the $40 to $60 range, honestly. My GMK67, the plastic version, I think I've showcased this before, but this now is between $40 and $50. I think I got this one for $40 or $50 as well. This is the Sidu QK61. I purchased this one, the Sidu Nebula, for I think $55. MaxFit 61 was $41. And then I'm going to go into the depths to find this one. But WK61 Warmier, literally $30-something. It requires a lot of love and modding, but it is relatively cheap and it has a lot of potential. Now, I spray painted mine, but it comes in a good range of colors. Again, you need to mod it a lot. But there are a lot of mods that are really inexpensive, and one of them includes changing switches, which we'll get to later. Once you get into the $80 to $100 range, there's a couple of options. There are a few wood options, like the Warmier one that I mentioned before, that are wood. And then there's some plastic ones that are in the price range, mostly because of their size. Like the Ajazz, I think this is the AK966. I don't even think you can buy this one anymore, but I saw the green and I had the green knob and I had to get it. You're also going to notice some very good aluminum options. Now, these are not the stock keycaps. It came with double shot PBT keycaps that were all sort of like different shades of green. This is the Warmier SK71 Pro, if I didn't say that already. It's a hefty aluminum board. I believe it's like a ball catch opening, if I'm not mistaken. If not, no, it screws. It screws. Anyway, this has a case that is screwed close, so it's very, very easy to mod if you choose to do so, which, I don't know, like, unless you want to take sound dampening out, I wouldn't mod it, because it's pretty damn good out of the box. And we'll go to the back. We got a nice two-toned bottom case with a mirrored back weight, which is insane for under $100. And that's sort of the $80 to $100 range. Spending more than $100 on their first mechanical keyboard. I sure as hell did not. So yeah, 100 plus is going to be things that you potentially build yourself. Sometimes there are pre-built ones. After $100 or $120, you're very much paying for aesthetics if you're buying a pre-built. Unless you're buying something from like QWERTY Keys or brands like that where you're actually paying for quality as well. But if you're just sticking to your typical generic websites like Amazon, you're paying for aesthetics after the 120 mark. Once you've determined your budget and what sort of characteristics you want in your keyboard, the base, the bare bones, the pre-built, whatever you end up buying, now you gotta figure out what you want to put in if you got a bare bones, or if you are thinking of changing the switches in your pre-built. Now, there are a lot of very wonderful options available that were not available when I was starting. A lot of boards are already 5-pin hot swappable by this point. You're not really going to see boards that don't take 5-pin switches. Unless you're going in like the really, really cheap price range, like $20 or less. So when it comes to switches, your world is pretty much open. The only things that you need to consider are how you want them to sound, how you want them to feel, and how much you're willing to spend. So some really good affordable options are going to be from brands like HMX, ACO, KTT, and yeah, I think those are my big three. HMX, ACO, KTT, and then I know B-Sun is pretty good as well, from what I've heard. There are 4 main types of switches that you're going to see on the market. You're going to see linear switches, which are smooth all the way down. I've got a linear switch in my GMK67. Smooth all the way down. Actually, I'm going to get a linear switch that is not in a board so we can see it a little bit better. So I've got an HMX Deep Navy linear switch here. It sounds like this. And you'll see that there's nothing on the way down. It's just straight down all the way. Super smooth. That's your linear switch. They tend to be a little bit quieter without necessarily being silent. You can get loud linear switches, and I personally do like them. I like a loud linear switch. Then you've got tactile switches, which have sort of a bump on the way down. I'm not sure if you can see that. But it's not going all the way down unless I really press down on it. Then there's clicky switches. Oh lordy, never did I think I would be reaching in here again for clicky switches. These are going to be the most common clicky switch you're going to find in a pre-built board. Altemu Blues. These aren't the best quality, but for demonstration purposes, they make a click sound. And like tactile switches, there's a bump on the way down. There's a piece of plastic creating that clicky sound. And actually, I don't think I brought the tactile switch to the camera, so here's the tactile switch. Akko cream blue box switch, by the way. And then your final sort of like main keyboard switch that you're going to see is the silent switch. And as the name, just figured I'd make noise on the silent switch portion of this video, but this is a silent switch. This is the Akko Fairy switch. Maybe you hear something because it's close to the microphone. Here it is a little further away. And silents are mostly going to be linear. So all the way down, you don't really hear much. There's a piece of rubber inside which dampens most of the noise. Once you've decided whether you want a linear, tactile, clicky, or silent switch, you want to decide generally which sound or pitch you want from the switch. Now, if you are just starting off, I would recommend getting a linear or a tactile switch, unless you really like the sound of a clicky switch or you need a silent switch for your office needs. And you can get silent switches as linear and tactile as well. But if you're getting a linear or a tactile that makes noise, you need to remember the spring weight makes a difference. So if you want a lower pitch switch, you're going to get a switch that's heavier, that the spring is heavier, because this is going to give you a lower pitch. Whereas a lighter spring weight is going to give you a higher pitch. And to an extent, spring weight matters with clicky and silent switches, but that's more for feel. Whereas with a linear or tactile switch that makes noise, your primary focus is going to be sound. Let's talk keycaps. You can get keycaps in a few different materials. The first and most common one you're going to see on a keyboard that's maybe in the $30 to $40-ish range is going to be ABS. I don't know, that's too far from the mic. ABS in its lower cost form is going to be higher pitched as you know, a higher cost ABS keycap. But lower cost ABS keycaps definitely sound a little bit more plasticky and like thin, because they are thin. Then there are palm keycaps, which are like ABS, pretty high pitched. And in the keyboard that does not have Gateron white switches, which I'm going to take these out, a palm keycap is going to be higher pitched, like I said, but it's going to sound like a bit fuller than an ABS keycap. Then there is PBT. PBT is a slightly thicker plastic. And it sounds a little bit lower pitched than ABS or palm. And then finally, I'm going to do some heavy lifting here. This keyboard is a Big Mama keyboard, super heavy, because it has ceramic keycaps on it. Ceramic keycaps are very low pitched. They're what you would call thocky. But they are a little bit pricey, so I would recommend holding off on these until you're very much into the hobby. And even then, I would get them on sale. But in general, if you are just starting out with the hobby, you're going to want PBT keycaps like these. Or you're going to want some affordable but reasonably high quality ABS keycaps. So unless you really want the shine through, you don't need the shine through on the ABS keycaps. Try to avoid shine through. And then once you have decided what material you want your keycaps to be, you have to think about the profile you want them to be in. Meaning basically how they look and feel. Like apart from colors and imaging and all that. Images. So there are a variety of keycap profiles that you can choose from. The most common is cherry. And basically this is what you would expect on your typical work keyboard, I think. You know, you got a square keys with varying heights, and it sort of like curves very comfortably, so it's very easy to type with. Then you can have something with an OEM profile, which is similar to a cherry profile, but slightly taller. Then there is this one, MOA profile. This one is relatively new. The keycaps are all at the sort of the same height, and they have a little scoop in the middle where your finger will rest. I think they're a little bit difficult to type on, but you know, frequent laptop users will love these, I think. And I think as a former frequent laptop user, I would absolutely have loved this many a year ago. Then there's other keycap profiles like XDA, which is basically like MOA, but without the little scoop. It's just flat all the way. And then there are like a number of other ones that you can encounter. SA is like really high, like super, super high up. There are a lot of profiles, and I cannot remember them all. Your keycap profile will affect your sound. This is future switches and stuff coming in to say this. Taller keycap profiles like SA, XDA, MOA, OEM are going to sound a bit more hollow than lower keycap profiles like Cherry. Cherry is really nice because it makes your keyboard sound really full, and it's also really easy to type on. But ignore my biases and pick your own. Pick your own. Pick your favorite. Well, once you've got everything ordered, once you've picked everything and made your purchase, now you have to do the obvious, which is waiting for it to arrive. Now, once your things have arrived, you're just going to go ahead and, you know, get them all ready on your desk. For my base, I'm going to be using the GMK67 aluminum version, which came pre-built because the bare bones version was sold out by the time I went to go purchase it. Then for my switches, I'm using HMX Jinhai. I hope I pronounced that correctly. But those are my switches. And then for my keycaps, I'm using this relatively inexpensive $22 PPT set that I also ordered online from Epomaker. And all of these things I did get through Amazon, because Amazon is accessible, and that's the whole point of this video. Hello again from voiceover mode, mind the noise. Once you have your pre-built, the first thing you want to do is take off your keycaps. Be careful, don't use this kind of keycap puller. The plastic one will ruin your keycaps and your switches. You're better off using something like this one. This one's great, this one's fine, this isn't going to damage anything. If you want an easier time, use one like that. And for your switches, you can use a switch puller like that. To remove your keycap, you're going to take the wire part of your keycap puller push it underneath the key, twist, and then pull straight up. You're going to go ahead and do that for the rest of your keyboard. Sometimes your switches may come up with the keycaps depending on how loose the plate is on your keyboard. Don't worry about this. You can always just stick them back in if you want to keep the switches, or you can put them away as you go if you do not want to keep them. Now, if you decide you want to keep your keycaps, that's fine. Just put them back on later. The big keys can be a bit hard to take off from time to time, as you can see here. Now, I'm sure you don't want me to do this for the whole keyboard on camera, so let's speed things up a little bit. Alright, and now all of your keycaps should be off. Now you gotta pull off your switches. Now, just a couple, well, one major warning beforehand. Sometimes the switches can be difficult to remove if your plate is on the tighter side or if the switch that's in the keyboard is too big. You'll notice I'm having that issue here, where these switches are fitting a little bit extra tightly into the plate. I've noticed this with certain brands like Gateron and Duroc. I've broken so many Duroc lavenders. When you're pulling your switches up, you're going to notice two plastic tabs on each side of the switch. You're going to push those in on both sides, like I'm doing here, and then pull straight up, and that'll help you take them out a bit more easily. I'm sure you don't want to see me do this for the rest of the keyboard, so let's speed it up again. And now all of your switches are off. Now you can put your new switches in. You may notice some small white dots on your PCB. If you have them, those are LED lights. And if they're closer to you, like they are here, that means your PCB is south facing. If they're away from you, then your PCB is north facing. You may also notice two small holes on either end of your PCB with metal inside. Those are where your switch pins are going to go. And if they're further away from you, the PCB is south facing. If they're closer to you, the PCB is north facing. My PCB is south facing. And we know this because my LED is closer to me and my two switch pin holes are further away from me. Now when you get your switch and put it in the PCB, you're going to want to make sure that the sloped end, because there's two ends, sloped and straight, but you want the sloped end to be facing opposite from the holes where your pins go. So if you have LEDs, the slope side is going to be where your LED is. Now I've noticed that while putting these in, a lot of these pins are bent, so I wouldn't necessarily use this particular bender, but you can just put them back into place with your fingers, as you'll see me do here. Or rather, you'll see the shadows of my hand doing off camera because I was stupid and I filmed this in portrait. But yeah, you can just sort of like, if you see a bent pin, push it back into place with your fingers. And once the pin is straight again, you can put your switch in. And then you'll just keep putting them in for the rest of the keyboard. Now you can finally put on your keycaps. We're going to annoy the super grating noise in the background, at least for me right now, because I'm running out of time on my school paid subscription. So the first keys you're going to want to put on are your stabilizer keys, so your shift, left and right shift if you have a 60% or a TKL or a full size. So your shift, spacebar, enter, and backspace keys, and if you have a numpad, the two plus button and enter key on there as well. And you're just going to check to make sure that there's no stabilizer rattle of any kind, which is what you'll see me doing here for the next many seconds. And I noticed some of the stabilizers did rattle, so I'm going to go ahead and lubricate those off camera. Then you can go ahead and put the rest of your keycaps on. Sometimes you may have some resistance, but that's usually just a matter of how you lined it up. That's easy to fix. And I wouldn't recommend pulling up keycaps with your hands like I just did there, but if you need to, you need to. And then, because this is kind of slow, I'm going to go ahead and speed this up again. And once your keycaps are all on, congratulations on building your first keyboard. As this video comes to a close, I am going to be leaving you with before and after sound tests.